scenarios are used in risk from many different ways, from very, very quantitative scenarios, particularly in the financial industry, to much more broad, qualitative, what we call macro-level strategic scenarios that look at the next 20 to 25 years. So there's a long time frame that goes from the very, very quantitative side of things from 1 or 2 years to a much longer, so 25, 30-year period. Here in the Risk Centre, we're looking at particularly event scenarios. So these are how extreme events, we typically use a 1 in 100 probability, how these extreme events impact upon the economy and on the wider society, on business and industry. We take a very, very long approach, so we try to benchmark it at about 1,000 years. So for things like weather, earthquakes, volcanoes, we try to go back as far as we possibly can. That's a little bit harder when we have things like cyber catastrophes to worry about, because obviously there's only about 20 years worth of data there. And then we try to establish a picture of how this event has unfolded over the past 1,000 years or whatever timeline there is, and then try to derive a return period. And then from that return period, as we've chosen 1 in 100, we look at what sort of impact would occur from that. So it's challenging sometimes. If it's a natural disaster, we can look at what a 1 in 100 earthquake severity looks like and then apply knowledge of that onto the current socioeconomic sort of framework or template just now. For the more human-orientated scenarios, things like cyber or geopolitical conflict, or crime, we have to look at what a 1 in 100 impact would be. So one of our scenarios is exploring what would happen if the oil supply of the world was dropped dramatically by 1 to 2% through disruption of Saudi Arabia. So there we have to try to use best judgment, talk to as many experts as we can from a variety of subjects, from economics, politics, the military, to get a sense of what that future might actually look like and where the impact would be felt at what point in the supply chain of companies would disruption occur. We have looked at some of the long-term futures, but the problem with that is the further you go out into the future, the more you start dealing with almost pure uncertainty, that there's so many directions that the future could unravel that it turns into almost taking a best guess. And we're trying to make things as applied as possible and as relevant to companies as possible. So we try to maintain that maybe 5-year time horizon without getting too far into the future, into the complete unknown unknowns, if you will. Worst case scenarios are one of the devilishly fun parts of the job, because you really get to, it sounds terrible, but you really get to think about what a disaster would be, what it would actually mean, because obviously life continues, it goes on, but you have to think about how it would go on, what the normal structures of life would be like if there was a catastrophic earthquake in California, if there was a flood that we haven't seen before in Thailand or in China, if there is some catastrophic disruption to the supply of oil. How will life change? How will it adapt? And how will we as people and as businesses react to that? There is a danger of getting carried away with the scenarios, that you get led down a path almost of chaos. And it's very easy to forget that there are feedback loops that enter into the process, that governments do act, that people act differently in a crisis than they do when in a period of stability. So we tend to write the scenario, then consult with a wider audience, with our subject experts, and make sure that we've calibrated them properly.